Hello, all, and welcome to the AI Cloud and Modern Workplace Conference 2024. We are delighted to have you here again, and we hope you enjoy this online event. We have a very exciting agenda for all these 3 days, with speakers from a different background and perspectives who will share their insights, their expertise, and how AI and cloud computing is transforming the way we work and our lives. But before we dive into the session, we have a very special guest for the third presentation. He's here to talk about uh, something which is a part of our life that we are using every day. I think that for all of us that we are working on Microsoft technologies, how to enhance your learning and career with Microsoft Learn and its community. Let me share a few things about our next very, very special guest. He's a visionary leader, an excellent professional with many years of experience and contribution to the community. He's mastermind leader, a mentor, and a catalyst for learning and development. He's passionate, talented, professional. I met her now with the conference, and but George, the co-organizer of this conference, speaks with the best words about our next uh, uh, speaker. Please join me in welcoming our very, very special guest, Peter Dubrin, Microsoft Learn advocate at Microsoft. Peter, it is a great honor for us to have you with us in this conference. I would like to express our immense appreciation for your presence in our conference. I'm not sure that I pronounce okay your name because I'm in a pressure now. You can understand that it is difficult to present, but I would like to express honestly our appreciation for your valuable help and all these contribution that you are doing for us. And let me share you that Microsoft Learn is a part of my life. I'm all day in Microsoft Learn, and the stage is yours. I don't want to keep the audience. Thank you so much, and we are here to see your very interesting presentation.
Okay, thanks a lot. I don't think I've ever had such an introduction, so I'm very happy to be here and honored to to host this event to share what I've experienced, right? Because this story is my story, you could say, right? Sometimes you present something that you don't own completely, but this is really a story about me and how I do now what I like, right? When you have a job that doesn't feel like work, you don't have to work a day in your life. So that's it. So okay, so who am I? I'm Peter. I live in the Netherlands. So the when the initial emails came from a Greek person, an MVP, I was hoping for the best. But anyway, here I am in gray Netherlands with rain. Anyway, but happy to do this remote. Um, yeah, so I work at Microsoft. In the past, I've worked at other companies too, at system integrators. I was a consultant, an architect, and I was always working like on knowledge sharing, right? Just doing my job and just building the routine of or deploying the tool at a customer that it felt like it wasn't done yet, right? I wanted to talk about it because maybe other people can learn about it, things that work, things that don't work. So I also always wanted to share, and so that's also how I became an MVP. But that was ended in 2011 when I joined Microsoft, right? That's when your MVP ship ends. So I joined consulting services and later cloud solution architect. At some point, I left to work at Docker for 2 years to enjoy the startup life and open source, which was a great experience too. After that, I came back. And since then, I thought, can I change this so much around that knowledge sharing becomes my work, my day-to-day work, and I still have that technical passion and knowledge and network and all those things. So that's where I am now. I work in the global team of Cloud and AI, where Skilling is building the Microsoft Learning platform as well as its content, right? So sometimes you don't know, all the things, or you don't realize all the things that are behind the covers in Learn, and we'll touch upon a few things now. But we don't do that alone, right? There's a lot of people within the company who help. We also consider that a community, although it's internal. And you, right? People outside who look at Learn, right? Who visit Learn, but also who share feedback or help improve. And all of that is great, and we'll talk more about those details. I should ask the organizers if there is a way that people can ask questions. I don't know that. Is there interaction?
We have an open Q&A, and when someone sent a question, would you like to stop you, or would you like to keep it at the end?
No, you can do depending on. We'll look at the timing, right? At some point, we maybe have to go, but just to make sure that I can share all the things that I was planning to share. But if there's something unclear, or someone has a follow-up question, that's fine. Okay, just the summary, right? If you are here to learn about an Azure service, about AI, I'll talk a bit about it, but the essence here is a bit different, right? As you can see on the wheel in the middle of the screen, we talk about Microsoft Learn. We talk about how people visit Microsoft Learn, and we call those learners, right? You're visiting Learn initially to consume content. And at some point, you learn more, right? You've tried something, maybe you've put something in production at a customer or in your own company, and then you become an expert. And that's it's an ongoing process, because technology is always developing, right? So you may be an expert in, say, Exchange Server version old, and that's great. And there's also something new, right? And the same is true for all the cloud services that we have now, or actually the problem is getting bigger, right? With hundreds of services and all those features. And then those are just the individual services, right? Suppose you create a solution of all those services, and then the matrix becomes enormous. Anyway, bottom line of this session, lots of people visit Microsoft Learn for the authority, right? That Microsoft Learn is. So no question about that. That's where you go for what should it be like. Learners learn, you become an expert. And then at some point, you are also, as an expert, you have the opportunity to bring stuff back to Learn. And on the one hand, you could say, why does Microsoft need people to share that stuff? Well, as I said, we have limited people who can maintain all those things, who can write all the things down. And we have a million different combinations, you could say. And so there's always something that is either it's outdated, or it doesn't work, or there's a new product, or the product is renamed, and so there's always need for people to learn, to share feedback. There's also always people who have questions. And we'll talk about a couple of those capabilities in Learn, where you as an expert can share. And don't be afraid that if you think, well, I have just a year of experience in something, to be an expert, am I an expert? The question, right? We'll talk about that in a bit. You definitely are when you work in a company or with customers, and you're advising every day. Okay, so why would you contribute, right? The Simon Sinek golden circle, start with a why. Because we can talk about all the features that Learn has, but that's just a side effect. The essence is why you want to help, and different people have different reasons. Some just want to share something tangible, right? Maybe you have investigated something and you've written a document, but it's not really tangible. And now you want to share it. You want to help someone else. You want to work with customers, right? Or help additional customers. You want to help your peers. Maybe you are a consultant or thinking about becoming an MVP, then this visibility is very important, and growing your brand, right? You can also share on different platforms, and I definitely love do that. Actually, I encourage you to do that. And I think Microsoft Learn can play a role there because of the visibility, right? Everybody says that they visit Learn, so that is definitely something that, yeah, that is a great place for you to advertise your brand, your knowledge, your experiences. We should also talk about why not, right? Because why sounds easy. Hey, yeah, I want to help people, I want to help customers. But then the reality hits, and there's two blockers for why people don't share knowledge. One is priorities. So many people say, I don't have time, right? But is that true? Do you not have time to do that? How long do you need to spend, right, to provide feedback or to share an answer to a question a person have? It's a matter of priorities. And then also, when you define those priorities, don't do that on your own, right? Make sure that you talk with your colleagues, with your manager, with other people who may be interested. So communicating about those priorities is very important. On the right-hand side, you see a blog post by Scott Hanselman. If you don't know Scott, look him up. Scott Hanselman is very well known in lots of spaces. He does TikTok nowadays too. He's a YouTuber, but he also has a blog. And this blog post is from 2010. But this is sort of the way I look at the world. And so one manager at some point said, you don't spend enough time at a customer, right? You spend too much time sharing knowledge. You should spend more time at a customer. And that's where this blog post hit me, because Scott openly says, if you send an email to a person, maybe one person reads it, maybe 3 people read it. But if you write a blog post or something else out in the public, then you have much more potential, right, to share that knowledge and to make that land somewhere. And so maybe you just write a blog post for yourself, but if you put it out on the internet and it's indexed by search engines, then maybe 100 people see it, 1,000 people see it. I experimented with it. Last year, I created a couple of YouTube videos, just like 4 or 5, and it takes me too much time, so I don't do it. But I wanted to try what the effect is, right? And some of those are picked up, and then all of a sudden 1,000 people have watched your video. I'm like, wow, that's really impressive, right? And I'm not advertising at all. So the scale at which you things do, and then then all of a sudden that becomes different, right? You don't send an email to a person, but you send them a link to a blog post that you've written and that you can reuse also. The other thing is imposter syndrome. People say, I'm not good enough. I'm not the best. I'm not the vice president within Microsoft to say this with authority. And then it really comes down to like define your niche. When you are a consultant or an engineer and you are advising within your company or at customers, then you are an authority already, right? Just at a smaller scale. So define your niche. What are you good at? What is your sweet spot? What have you tried today? And as I said, technology developments go that fast that it is really crucial to keep sharing, because person may have written a book about something, right? Suppose I've written a book about app service last year. It's already outdated. There's new stuff out there. And if you try that feature today, then you are the authority, and the book author isn't. I hope that makes sense. Okay, and then we go to the how, right? We started with the why and the why not, then the how. So some people may learn from documentation mostly, but when you start investing in what has that platform to offer, then you realize that there's a whole bunch of different things. So documentation is there definitely, and it's more important than ever. There's also training. So initially documentation was technical. It was a bit boring, you could say, right? Lots of text you have to read. And in the time where YouTube and TikTok are entertaining the world, then documentation is slow and boring and gray. But in essence, it's the source that feeds into a knowledge service, right? That shows us now that we can have co-pilots to answer things. Well, it's feeding this as the authority. So training was started as a way to have more interaction, to actually try within the sandbox, and to have more of a dialogue. Eventually, to learn something, right? Credentials. You may know Learn certification or Microsoft certifications from I think 20 years ago. I did the same, right? At a test center, you go there, you pass an exam. In essence, that's still there. You can also do them at home. And we also have applied skills, right? Because a certification is pretty formal and use case. There is a bit of a case, but it's more about what you learn or what you've tried. Applied skills is actually you get an assignment and 2 hours and a virtual environment and go have fun. So I think that's a really exciting development. But we're talking here about contributions, right? And about sharing back and building your brand. Credentials is not in that space, but Q&A is, right? So we'll talk about documentation, about Q&A. But at first, it is also fine that you just visit Learn to learn. Or to share links with your colleagues, with your customers, with anybody who doesn't know things yet, right? Because that's where the learning starts, and also where we are interested in just getting to people that we don't reach yet. And obviously Microsoft does a whole bunch of things. We do advertising, we send emails and all those, but there are still people out there that we can't reach. And so if you know who those are, then we also love to get that started. We'll talk more about, you can also answer questions in Q&A, and you can help improve things like documentation. There's code samples, assessments, shows with video. It's not at the YouTube level yet, but it's getting there. And profiles are becoming more important. You've seen a development that now certifications are in that profile, and there's going to be more developments in that space, as you can imagine, with all kinds of new technologies, that you should get more personalized experience within Learn versus that my experience is the same as someone else. And there's much more. This is just a high-level overview. Right, so specifically on documentation, why is that so important? Well, 2 things. You may have seen that we now have the Azure Copilot, right, on the right. So initially on the left, you had just plain documentation. You now see an embedded video, and that's actually a project I'm working on to find a way where people who previously had to read text, but maybe didn't like it, or had to try something but they didn't have an environment, or maybe the documentation is broken. Right, in all of those cases, it's interesting to see the video, to watch the video actually show the thing that you want to do. Right, so in this case, it's a quick start. You're deploying an ASP.NET Web App. You can try it with the Azure CLI, but maybe you don't have the time to do that. Maybe you don't have the environment, or something in the commands in the documentation that don't work. Then you can still use that video to consume. Just as important, or maybe even more important, on the right-hand side, you see a demo of Azure Copilot, where you previously had to find the place where this was described, right? You had to search Google with Bing, as Scott Hanselman said, to find the CLI commands to do this thing, right? You want to deploy a Cosmos DB and an app service. You can still do that, right? If you already know that by heart, or you prefer to work from a document that you can then share with a colleague maybe, who can repeat that same process, fine. But you can also ask Copilot. So Copilot, and you say, hey, Copilot, I'd like to deploy these in these services. Can you provide me the Azure CLI commands? That's really productivity, right? So if you want, you can still look them up But if you don't, it's there within seconds. And this is based on text, right? So the knowledge service on the right, or the Azure Copilot, is using the knowledge service underneath, which has, it's a large language model consisting of all the learned documentation. Okay, so we've spoken about documentation, about you can share links, you can, documentation is more important than ever. But there's other ways to interact too, right? We're talking about building your brand. And so for instance, Q&A is something where MVPs, so most valuable professionals, people not working at Microsoft, but helping out the community for Microsoft, they're very active here. And that's, there's a reason for that, because it's very clear what your impact is. Your profile contains all the questions you've been involved with, and also knows which ones have been marked as complete, as an accepted answer. Then Q&A is not Q&A as it used to be, right? Just plain forums in MSDN or TechNet. But Q&A is actually an advanced platform where now also you see ANI trickling in, right? So there's a Q&A assist that helps you look up similar questions. It also enters or suggests documentation when you're entering your question. And when you write a question or even an answer, it can help you rephrase the text so that it becomes more clear. Now, there's different developments in Q&A that are also interesting, right? Things like private messages, so that a person can approach another person asking for clarity. But things like this really help you as a contributor to share your expertise and build your brand as someone who knows how Azure functions work. And then we're going slowly towards authoring, right? Creating documentation. But before you do that, you don't have to get into Markdown and start building. When you notice something is not correct or is not helpful or is helpful, we'd love to know about it. So at the top, you see the starting page of Azure App Service, and there's a thumb that shows feedback, and at the bottom too, you can say, was the feedback good or not? And then when you press that, you get a pop-up saying different reasons for positive or for negative feedback. And what's new is the translation quality, because documentation and Q&A and a whole bunch of other things, we're trying to make that more accessible for people who are not native English speakers, right? I am from the Netherlands and I work at an American company, so I speak quite a lot of English, but not everybody does. And so there's especially regions in the world where language is not used that often. And then when English is not used that often, and then it's more important to get a proper translation. And when things are translated automatically, for instance, there may be a recurring translation error, right? And when we know about the translation quality, we can improve those specific pages. But also if it's not translation, but things are just not clear, not complete, not up to date, all those things we'd like to know. And also if it is, right? Most people share feedback when it isn't, but it's also good to know that things still are accurate. Okay, so now you have noticed that there's a typo or a sentence is not correct, or maybe a sentence is missing, right? And I'm deliberately keeping the change less than a paragraph, right? When you start writing a paragraph, then it becomes like a big issue, and you should probably have a conversation about it. So first of all, did you know that documentation lives in GitHub? Did you know that there's a Microsoft Docs organization with a repository, in this case for SQL Docs, but there's also one for Azure Docs, for .NET Docs. PowerShell. There's a whole bunch of different repos. And then in those repos, you as an external person can actually edit and update. So you can create, eventually you can submit a pull request with a change. And as I said, you should probably keep it relatively small, because normally we are sort of on top of these things. So if you are changing, I don't know, a certain spelling throughout an article, then you're probably doing a bit more than what's useful, right? The writer probably made an intentional choice to write the things that way, but maybe they missed a sentence or two or three, or typos also happen, right? So make sure you have a GitHub account, you link it to the Microsoft Docs organization, and then try to have that conversation. And you already see that there's a whole bunch of contributors to one document, right? Because a document lives quite a long time, especially things like SQL. There's different versions, and every version there's an update features, so that will live on, and your help is very much appreciated there. What you see at the bottom is a table in that GitHub, data that GitHub renders as a table. You don't see it on the left-hand side, right, on the regularly rendered article. So that difference is markup, metadata, you could say. There's a person who's the author of that article, and there's also a reviewer. So the pro tip for things like feedback with bigger issues, right? When you say, well, half of this article is wrong, or you're missing something completely, then pro tip is to reach out to that person, either through GitHub or their Microsoft alias at Microsoft.com. And there you go.
Peter, we have a question from someone. Okay. How we can contribute the official material if we want to add something which is not included in the documentation? From George.
If you want something?
How we can contribute the official material if we want to add something which is not included in the documentation?
Yeah, so I think I hope I just explained that a bit. When you have something bigger, right, when it's a full article, please reach out to us, right? You probably don't want to write that in GitHub. But if it's a small thing, if it's just a word or a couple of words, maybe a couple of sentences, less than a paragraph, I always say, then you can actually use GitHub to do that, right? You can use a GitHub pull request, and then so it depends a bit. But if you actually have a concrete case, George, I'd love to talk about that, because this is how we make a difference, right? How we really make this better. And again, it's not a big company waiting for people to share their knowledge for free. It's actually, we can't keep track, right? There's so much out there. We have a limited number of technical people, but even if they all write full time, then they don't have all the times to replay all the customer scenarios, right? And all the combinations of products. So please have that conversation. Without going to GitHub, you can also see it directly in the source of the page, right? On the right-hand side, in this case, you see the regularly rendered page of Azure AD, now called something else. That's also lovely, right? The renaming products. Anyway, if you click right, with your right mouse, with your mouse and right, and you do view source, you see the data on the left-hand side. So you can see the MS author and the MS date, and when, who wrote it and when. That may also help to find the location of the document and to the person who to talk to. Okay, so now we're getting to more of the public side. We are advertising more about that you can do this. Previously, when you go to learn.microsoft.com and you scroll to the bottom of the page, there is a link that says contribute. And that took you to the left-hand side, to a bit of a boring document that describes how to set up your GitHub account, etc. But it didn't make it clear where you can contribute, right? All the places that you can contribute to. So now we have that on the right hand side, we have that page. This is created in just a team next to me. That makes it more interesting, and it shares more information across all the things that we have in Learn, like edit documentation still, but you can also respond to Q&A, create a collection, join a conversation in tech community. Yeah, maybe that's a good addition. I had that in the speaker notes somewhere, and I don't think I mentioned it. So I work for Learn, and Learn has a different organization within Microsoft and tech community, although we collaborate a lot. For instance, when a person wants to write an article for Azure Architecture Center, we always encourage them to publish to the Azure Architecture blog, which sits on techcommunity.microsoft.com. So there is collaboration, and there may also be a bit of overlap. The idea is that we don't want to compete. We have regular conversations about who's doing what functionality, but things like posting a question on tech community or posting a blog post on tech community is definitely something that you can do too, right? So you can ask for, you can create your own profile. I think you can any user can create a question, and you can ask for permissions to also author a blog post. No questions?
No, we don't have any other question.
Okay. Then here's another opportunity that we published last year. Yeah, so during the summer season, I worked on this. We realized that it was really hard for external people to just contribute a complete new article, right? So we created a new location for that called Microsoft Learn Community Content. We started with nothing, right? It was an empty website. And we had conversations with MVPs to shape this experience, both what it looks like, also what the authoring looks like. And it is fairly hands-off when it comes to Microsoft, right? So you publish to Learn, and I think that's a great platform for external users. So if you're interested in it, reach out. There is information about how to publish. If you're running into challenges, feel free to reach out to me, because I'd love to also get content there. There's another reason why we needed this, is because we had TechNet Wiki and MSDN Wiki, and those were old, right? They may have been around for 15 years or 20 even, and you could find all kinds of older information there, but there were also a couple of newer articles. And so MSDN and TechNet consisted of forums that have been migrated to Q&A. So that was covered, but we didn't have the wiki converted. And so what we've done is migrated a few of the active things to an archive. And then there's the Learn Microsoft community content, where you can actually build new things. So to the archive, we don't publish new things. That's just a one-way migration. But if there's new things with newer content, mostly like the recent cloud services, right, like Azure and M365 and Dynamics, that's where you want to publish to Microsoft Learn community content. Yeah, that's also good to know. I sit in the Cloud and AI organization, so we're primarily focused on Azure, but what I say applies to all the products. So it also applies to M365. They actually have a great community project, right? Their PMP, Practice and Practices project. It also applies to BAP, as we say, so the business applications. And then we're starting to do more of content syndication, right? So experimenting with combinations, because as you saw, the top level navigation of Microsoft consists of documentation, training, and credentials and Q&A. But what if I am now a person who's passionate about, say something, Azure Functions. And so I want to know all the things about Azure Functions, which could live in documentation, but it could also be training paths. It could also be a certification or an active Q&A thread that I could help with, right? And so this is the first. Obviously, AI is a big demand. So that's where we have, an umbrella on top of all the other pages. We call it the hub page. And this is where we bring together things that we think is relevant. And we're also showing content, from leading AI experts. So again, this is an opportunity for you to showcase your content. Do you create videos? Do you write blog posts somewhere? It doesn't have to be on Learn. You could be on Medium or YouTube or all those things. So the hub page. And then this is even more personal. So we're building Learn with community profiles. And this is actually a project that's now going on in a neighboring team, where they are almost like doing an interview with this person and talk about, hey, you sound like a person who's aware of what's happening in the space of machine learning. Can you tell me more, like, what do you use as sources? How do you learn things? How do you stay up to date? And then we link to it, right? And so some of them may be on Learn, which you see with the purple L, but it may also be on YouTube, or I think the MS Medium. And so this person shared their knowledge, and so this is a profile page, which obviously is even better for your visibility. But then again, this doesn't scale well, right? I think we have now about a dozen of these community profiles. But it's just a different angle to look at people and then learn the way they have learned, and see if that works for you. And then actually we're getting to the end of the content that I had prepared. So after this, we're open for questions, for discussions, for other things that you may have top of mind. I always plan to do things not for the full complete time, because then you miss out on the opportunity to share. But yeah, I think we've covered these things pretty well, right? Your expert journey. So you start as a learner, you go to Learn, and that's where you get your content. And at some point you think, someone else should know this, and you share it. And then at some point you've done something with it, and you find that people are struggling and they ask a question. So you can help answer that question in Q&A. Again, it's a great way to build your own brand, as well as help us and help the person who asked the question, right? Because if you've ever been in support scenarios, you know how challenging it can be to get the right help. And the people in the field know best what other people in the field need. And within Microsoft, a company with all those products, it can be hard, and it can be really difficult to find the right person who can answer it. Whereas maybe, it's just another person in the same community who knows the answer more quickly. And then lastly, improve documentation. And actually, on all of these things, you can talk much longer, and especially documentation. What I didn't mention here is, for instance, we have Azure Architecture Center, well-architected framework, and Cloud Adoption Framework. That's also considered documentation, but it's different than the product documentation, right? I also didn't mention how training works, right? Because that's a matter of permissions. There are some Markdown files that we have in public repositories, and some are in private repositories that just aren't shared with the community for various reasons. Probably because it doesn't make sense, because the solution is pretty complex, or there's intellectual property, or there's just knowledge, for instance, knowledge checks, right? We will never publish those, or never, probably not. So if you have feedback on training, you can also share that in a way with thumbs up and down. You can also right-click and view source and see who the author is. Yeah, and same applies to assessments and a bunch of those things. I think we had until the top of the hour, right? Do we have any additional questions?
We have more 5 minutes if you want. If we have any question, if you want to present something more.
Oh, okay. Let me see if I had additional things that I wanted to share. Just going back through the notes. Yeah, timing presentations is always a bit of a challenge, right? Here on Q&A, I don't think I mentioned, I've noted here that even answering questions or marking a question as answered is an action, right? Is a thing that helps. So that's also something that you can do. And as mentioned, Q&A may sound like a question that you can post on Tech Community. You're free to choose whichever you like. I think you should know that in Microsoft Q&A, there's probably more product groups and probably more MVPs. So I think chances are that you get better answers there. Plus, there's more AI developments to help you get to a good question or a good answer. So don't, but try both. Did I talk about all the things I wanted to mention here? Yeah, it's hard to imagine that we used to ship documentation, right? Back in the days with MSDN and TechNet, that we used to have CDs and DVDs with used on it. Now there's obviously much more development, and so it's also the way to keep this up to date, right? Not only the service and the software which is shipped daily, but also documentations online is obviously the way to go.
I have one question. I have a question. Is it possible to have a virtual labs in Microsoft Learn as a proposal? Get it as a proposal. For example, you say a procedure and to have a virtual lab to do it in. Okay, I can understand that it is difficult to do in every page or in every service, but I think in a simple services that are free from every one of us, I think that it is you have as a proposal get it. I remember the old many years ago that we have labs from Microsoft. Okay, and we read it, the official documentation, and then we are trying to make something like a demo to make the exercise.
Yeah.
Keep it as a proposal.
So you're aware of the sandbox in trading, right? You know about those?
Yes.
And you know about applied skills challenges?
Yes.
Yeah, so I think those two are the ones. Not everybody knows about applied skills. If we have time anyway, we should.
Yes. I remember the sandbox. Yes, this procedure I mean, but in more services. Yes.
Learn applied skills challenge. Credentials. You can still see my screen, right? So this is, there's two kinds of credentials, right? We're talking about credentials, and there's the official certifications, and then there's the applied credentials. And so you can do, you can actually have a lab, build an Azure AI Vision thing, and then you can do this as a test, but you can also not do it as a test, right? You can just take the assessment and say, well, let me just start that environment. And then all of a sudden I have an environment where I can run the test that I wanted to do. I don't have to set things up myself. It's already there. So you're sort of using a test environment for training purposes, and that's exactly what it's for. Does that help?
Yes, yes, of course. So
it's a bit slow in generating the environment, but that's always a demo, right?
Okay. We have opened we also have opened the call. That's why I think it has but I think it is okay. We can find all this interesting material. Peter, once again, I would like to thank you. A big thank that you are here today. You honor us once again, and I hope to present again together in the future, in the next time, about Microsoft certification and how can we work in Microsoft Learn to get the necessary knowledge for the Microsoft certification. I did it in the past, and it helped me a lot. A big thank, Peter, and I hope to see you in person in a summit,
yeah.
Everywhere.
Thanks for having me. It was great.
Thank you so much. Have a nice weekend.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.